Welcome to the Spiritual Development Channel. I'm Nasi Yashuvel. Today, we got a deep message. You know, I make this for people who may not understand certain things, so I make it very simple for them so they can walk away with knowledge and be able to break it down with a slight understanding of what's going on in the deeper spiritual sciences. So, we're going to talk about Aether and the Shamayim, which is the Hebrew word for heavens. Now, in ancient times, ether was considered the fifth element. It was the spiritual, mystical, celestial element. There was fire, water, earth, air, and then ether. And I know you heard in Greek mythology, ether was like the air of the gods, the air that they lived in and breathed. Ether is said to be the force used by God to create the universe. And we see this in Genesis 1:2. And the spirit of Elohim moved above the face of the waters. Waters symbolize consciousness. In the scriptures, sometimes when you see wells of water, you see the word ayin in Hebrew, which means I, representing the consciousness. Aether is indifferentiated, while ether is differentiated in the world of duality. So you got Aether, the one spelled with A. That's the pure form. And then you got ether, which is a differentiated form that is in a world of duality and is spelled without the A. Ether is the medium of light, from your radio waves to your gamma waves. Like if you drop a rock into a pond, it creates ripples or waves. Well, that medium would be the water. The same thing with our light. The light is the wave. So what medium is it? The ether. It is the pool, the fluidic substance, the spiritual substance of the universe. In Indian philosophy, they say the universe is composed of two materials, the prana energy that acts upon the Akasha, the fluid-like force, and everything is created out of the Akasha. And I know you heard the Akashic records and all of these other things. Well, Genesis confirms this. The acting force is the Ruach Elohim. It hovers over the Akasha, which is the primordial waters. You see how it lines up so beautifully? Early philosophers associate ether with the motions of the planets. This makes sense because Genesis speaks of the firmament in Hebrew, the raquiyah, which means a hammered out ring or extended surface. A hammered out ring or extended surface. Aha! Things orbiting around a particular matter. Now this brings me to the verse in Genesis 1, verse 6. And God said, let there be a firmament in the mid of the waters, and let it be between the waters, which is beneath the firmament, and waters above the firmament. And it was so, and God called the firmament heavens. So there was waters above the firmament, and there was waters below the firmament, which would be the seas. Above, possibly space. But we lived in the firmament, and God called the firmament Shamayim, which means heavens. So we live in heaven? Absolutely. Because the Shamayim and the Aether, which is the primordial waters in the beginning, the Shamayim, which means that which is Mayim, water. So it's the differentiated form of Aether. So the Shamayim is the ether, and we live in the heavens, but we're not in tune with it. So our writers make heaven so distant from us, above and far, because we're not connected to the source. Ether took a hit in 1887 with the Michelson and Morley experiment, where they used an interferometer to detect the ether winds, and it failed. Well, this is weird because they used a light and they had these mirrors reflecting them into like a cross angle. So if the ether winds were blowing in one direction, let's say going to the right, if it came back and reflected, the light came back and reflected to the left, then it should have been slower because it's going against the winds. But this did not happen. So this experiment was busted and called a failure. So they established theories of particle physics without it. So you have all of these theories of physics missing a key component. But let's say that there isn't any ether, and it's only empty space. And if light is wave properties, then what is waving? If you say lights are photon particles, you're right, but light has different colors, which are waves. So you're stuck on the waves. Let's go back to the prana, the ruach Elohim, and the Akasha ether, and the primordial waters. Every solid body that comes out the Akasha or the Mayim has a resonant cavity that stores sound. There goes your voice of God commanding it. This is getting deeper. And it interacts electromagnetically with the prana and the Akasha to determine the gravitational interactions and the movements in space. So now matter, because it's surrounded with sound, it interacts with the ruach Elohim and the Shamayim to determine where it's located and how the gravitational force is. Let's go to William Lyne in his book called The Occult Ether Physics, where they discovered some of the last writings of Nikola Tesla while he was in his hotel. Well, after he passed in his hotel. And, you know, Donald Trump's father came and picked up all the writings because they don't want free energy. They don't want the ether energy to be discovered. Well, I want to say this. Ether physics is a subatomic physics, which is subatomic and subelectronic. Line basic ether particle was called the omni. So he's not going to go into the up quarks or down quarks, but he's saying that there's something smaller than an atom, which has a positive nucleus, and which is called the omnion, and a sub-electron called the omnitron. Solid bodies pass through it, and it is so small. It behaves like a solid with the respect of its high frequency electromagnetic radiation from infrared light, which can be felt but not seen. It's an elastic solid, so small that empty space is filled with it, and it oscillates at higher frequencies than X-rays. So it's very tiny, and it's able to move through actual matter. So this is the breakdown of your ether particles. And it just gets deeper and deeper. And this is kind of the force that connects all things. In Star Wars, they say this. It is based on this hidden knowledge. The movie Star Wars is based on this force that connects all things. This elastic fluid-like force that creates and brings everything into harmony. It is the thing that is between you and me. A force that if you focus and meditate on, you can feel. You have to know that energy and spirit are just different vibrations. Matter, energy, mind, and spirit are different degrees of vibrations. Life comes out the ether, but when the force subsides, we go back into the ether or the Shamayim. If we tap into the ether, the energy is free and the powers alter objects that are stationary and objects that are in motion, such as celestial bodies. You also have the Tesla Tower that was built on the aquifers. It was called the Warden Cliffs. He built it similar to the pyramids of Giza and the pyramid of Chichen Itza, which had underground water channels and were able to send water to the surface. The high volume of water passing through the cavities was capable of producing an electrical current. And Chichen Itza pyramid is built over a sinkhole called the cenote and was connected to other lakes. Like Tesla's towers, the ancients were trying to tap into the power of the ether. Imagine if you were able to tap into the power of the ether. You would be able to move forces, objects. You will be able to command the elements, because all elements derive out of the ether. You will be able to stop celestial bodies similar to the prophets. These are the forces that they don't want you to know about. So they hid all the information for years. They covered up the power of the ether. They started calling it dark energy, just so you couldn't connect to it. They deny it, but the ancients knew of this power. And Nikola Tesla himself called it the Force. And George Lucas took that understanding and made a whole series of movies. Spiritual Development Channel. Thank you.